to another broadcast of Comics Let's Talk. Kevin Gibbon with you once again, and today we're going to look at the comic book creators who have passed away in 2018.
Everybody I know has started cartooning when they were very, very small. I think Linda Berry said, everybody cartoons, everybody draws, everybody sings, everybody dances when they're a kid, and some people grow out of it. I never grew out of it. I used to draw, give my mom cartoons, that sort of thing. And I never thought about doing it until around about 1982, when it was during the years when the first comics, Judge Dredd, American Flag era was going on, and then I walked into the comic book. I had gotten back into reading comics after a long hiatus, and picked up a copy of Love and Rockets. And so here was something by some people who were young, they were punks, they were into science fiction, they were Hispanic, they were Mexican American, and that was a bolt from the blue. It was like, they did this, I can do this. So I spent about 4 or 5 years trying to draw like the Hernandez brothers, and unfortunately I never stopped.
Another comic book creator who passed away in 2018 was Mort Walker. He was born in El Dorado, Kansas as the third of 4 children in the family. His siblings were Peggy W. Harmon, Robin Ellis Walker, and Mary Lou White. After a couple of years, his family moved to Amarillo, Texas, and later to Kansas City, Missouri. In late 1927, where his father, Robin Adair Walker, was an architect, while his mother, Carolyn Richards Walker, worked as a newspaper staff illustrator. He was of Scottish, Irish, and English descent. One of his ancestors was a doctor aboard the Mayflower. After graduation, Walker went to New York to pursue a career in cartooning. He began doing Spider, a one-panel series for the Saturday Evening Post about a lazy, laid-back college student. When he decided he could make more money doing a multi-panels comic strip, Spider morphed into Beetle Bailey, eventually distributed by King Features Syndicate to 1,800 newspapers in more than 50 countries, for a combined readership of 200 million daily. In 1954, Walker and Dick Brown teamed to launch Hi and Lois, a spin-off of Beetle Bailey, as Lois was Beetle's sister. Under the pseudonym Addison, Walker began Boner's Ark in 1968. Other comic strips created by Walker included Gaiman and Patches, Mrs. Fritz's Flats, The Evermores, Sam Strip, and Sam and Silo, the last 2 with Jerry Dumas. In 1974, Walker opened the Museum of Cartoon Art, the first museum devoted to the art of comics. It was initially located in Greenwich, Connecticut, and Rye Brook, New York, before moving to Boca Raton, Florida in 1992. From previous marriages, Walker and his wife Catherine had 10 children between them. Walker's sons Brian and Greg Walker now produce the Hi and Lois strip with Chance Brown.
All my characters are based on real people.
Okay.
I had a high school buddy who was so lazy that we went to play golf one day, and his mother said he's still in bed. So I go upstairs. I said, "Come on, David, let's get going." And he just turned over and went back to sleep. I turned his bed over. He fell out on the floor, grabbed his pillow, and went on sleeping.
Tragically, Mort Walker died from complications of pneumonia on January 27, 2018, at his home in Stamford, Connecticut. He was 94 years old. On March 19th, we lost Murray Karn, a Canadian comics artist who created Thunderfist and Jeff Waring. He passed away at the age of 93. Murray began his career with Bell Features in early 1942, while the publisher was still under the name Commercial Signs of Canada. Only 18 at the time, much of his original work was done for the Thunderfist and Jeff Waring storylines. Karn worked on Thunderfist and Active Comics and was the most consistent artist for the line. His talents were not overlooked at Bell Features. He also did several covers for Active Comics, as well as working on the Jeff Waring of the Amazon storyline of his own creation. It was released about a month after Thunderfist in March of 1942 and was run in WOW Comics, Bell Features' first comic title. Karn continued to work regularly for Bell Features for the next 2 years as artist on these and other storylines, including Captain Red Thornton, Red Baxter, and Scotty McDonald. He even contributed artwork to the narrative shorts in Triumph Comics, all under Bell Features. Within a couple years, Karn went into the medical corps, but continued cartooning for the wounded troops to raise their morale. As Bell Features continued to gain prominence in Canada's comic book industry, Karn was easily accepted back into the ranks just shortly before the end of Canada's Golden Age and finished the last 2 issues on Jeff Waring. Shortly after, Karn went to New York to pursue other opportunities. His classic and realistic style make his comics very easy to spot and a pleasure to view. His characters, nothing short of perfection, are elegantly composed, both on the paper and in character. Karn's style at this time was almost reminiscent of a 20s chic, with his big-eyed beauties and his men modeled much like Clark Gable. Specifically, Karn's style was distinctive in such a way that his comics were of a much higher caliber. On March 25th, we lost Lee Hawley, American comics artist. Ponytail assisted on Dennis the Menace and Looney Tunes comics, died at age 84 in an airplane crash. The New York Times reports Lee Hawley, the creator of the classic comic strip Ponytail, died on March 26th following a plane crash. He was 85 years old. Gordon Leroy Hawley was born in 1932 in Phoenix, Arizona, and grew up in Watsonville, California. He sold his first commissioned piece of work at the age of 15 and enlisted in the Navy at age 21. He served as a weapons inspector on the aircraft carrier USS Barraco during the Korean War and spent his free time drawing cartoons for the publications Our Navy Magazine and All Hands. After the war, he enrolled at the Chouinard Art Institute in Los Angeles and became an animator at Warner Brothers in 1955, working in Sylvester and Tweety creator Fritz Freeling's unit. In 1958, Hawley became the assistant and ghost illustrator for Dennis the Menace creator Hank Ketchum. 2 years later, Hawley launched his own daily strip, Ponytail, at King Features syndication. Following the trials and tribulations of its titular teenager, Ponytail Johnson, it wasn't the first comic strip about an adolescent, but it was considered the most authentic. As Hawley explained, he'd talk to teenagers at pizza parlors and attend dances, subscribe to teen publications, and even sat in on classes at his old high school to gain a better insight to what made them tick. He's kind of like the John Hughes of comic books. Hawley's sister Donna Roberts stated Hawley also drew on his own youth. Ponytail's boyfriend Donald was our brother Donald. Ponytail's father was like our dad. He drew on those memories. Ponytail ran in roughly 300 newspapers until October 16, 1988. It was considered a major draw for many young readers. Hawley also oversaw the character's adventures in a Dell Comics series which ran from 1962 to 1965, and for another book which also published by Carlton Comics from 1969 to 1971. Hawley also returned to his roots by drawing Gold Key Comics Looney Tunes and Porky Pig during the 70s, and the Bugs Bunny newspaper comic from 1980 to 1988, when he chose to retire following the end of Ponytail. On March 26, we lost Fred Boatman, who was an American cartoonist and graphic artist and made cartoons for Cartoons. He passed away at the age of 83. On April 8th, we lost Gunnar Persson. He was a Swedish cartoonist and comic creator. He was the son of Elof Persson, creator of one of Sweden's oldest comic strip characters, Kronblom. Gunnar began drawing the Kronblom comic strip in 1968 when his father's health got worse. Prior to Kronblom, Gunnar Persson had already drawn the comic strips Gus and Her Larsen in the comic book. Also in 2018, we lost William Vance, who was a Belgian comics artist known for his distinctive realistic style and work in Franco-Belgian comics. William Van Cutsem was born in Anderlecht near Brussels in 1935. After his military service in 55 through 56, he studied for 4 years at the Académie Royale des Beaux-Arts in Brussels. Originally from Flanders, he worked most of his life in France and moved later to Santander, Spain. Vance worked in a highly detailed, realistic style which has been described as precise and nervous, an inimitable style resembling no other author. An article in a Belgian magazine discussed his series Bruno Brazil and called his early work already meticulous and sophisticated, but describes how in the early 1970s it drifted away from the more typical realistic style common in Belgian comics at the time. He also started experimenting with the page layout, with large central panels and with the coloring, which showed influences of psychedelic art. On June 27th, we lost Harlan Ellison, an American writer known for his prolific and influential work in new wave speculative fiction, and for his outspoken combative personality. Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, described Ellison as the only living organism I know whose natural habitat is hot water. His published works include more than 1,700 short stories, novellas, screenplays, comic book scripts, teleplays, essays, and a wide range of criticism covering his literature, film, television, and print media. Some of his best-known work includes the Star Trek episode The City on the Edge of Forever, his A Boy and His Dog cycle, and his short stories I Have No Mouth Now I Scream. Also, Repent, Harlequin, said the TikTok Man. He was also editor and anthologist for Dangerous Visions in 1967 and again in 1972. Ellison won numerous awards, including multiple Hugos, Nebulas, and Edgars.
Are you going to be good?
No.
Let me say that another way. Are you going to be good?
I will eat this. Jeffy is 5, not Jeffy was 5.
I think it's hard. It's Jeffy is 5 instead of Jeffy. Ladies and gentlemen, Harlan Ellis.
Ellison was born to a Jewish family in Cleveland, Ohio, on May 27, 1934, the son of Sarita and Lois Laverne Ellison. Ellison published 2 serialized stories in the Cleveland News Journal from 1949, and he sold a story to EC Comics early in the 1950s. During this period, Ellison was an active and visible member of science fiction fandom. He published his own science fiction fanzines, such as Dimensions and later Science Fantasy Bulletin. Ellison moved to New York City in 1955 to pursue a writing career, primarily in science fiction. Over the next 2 years, he published more than 100 short stories and articles. He served in the U.S. Army from 1957 to 1959. His first novel, Web of the City, was published during his military service in 1958, and he said he had written the bulk of it while undergoing basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. After leaving the Army, he relocated to Chicago, where he edited Rogue magazine. Ellison moved to California in 1962 and subsequently began to sell his writing to Hollywood. He co-wrote the screenplay for The Oscar, starring Stephen Boyd and Elkie Summer. Ellison also sold scripts to many television shows: The Loretta Young Show, using the name Harlan Ellis, The Flying Nun, Burke's Law, Route 66, The Outer Limits, Star Trek, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Cimmerian Strip, and The Alfred Hitchcock Hour. Ellison's screenplay for the Star Trek episode The City on the Edge of Forever has been considered the best of the 79 episodes in the series.
Let's get the hell out of here.
In 1965, he participated in the Selma to Montgomery marches led by Martin Luther King Jr. Ellison has written several original stories for different comic series: Creepy number 32, a story written around the Frazetta cover, also Rock God by Ellison and Neil Adams. In 1971, he wrote Avengers number 88, The Summons of Cyclops, with Roy Thomas and Sal Buscema. In 1970, he also wrote The Incredible Hulk number 140, The Brute That Shouted Love at the Heart of the Atom, which is also Roy Thomas and with Herb Trimpe. In 1972, he wrote Avengers number 101, Five Dooms to Save Tomorrow, with Roy Thomas and Rich Buckler. In 1984, he wrote Daredevil number 208, The Deadliest Night of My Life, Arthur Byron cover, and Dave Mazzucchelli. In 1984, he also wrote Daredevil number 209, Blast from the Past. In 1985, he wrote Heroes for Hope, Wolverine, with Frank Miller. In 1986, he wrote Detective Comics number 567, The Night of Thanks But No Thanks, with Gene Colan. In 2001, he wrote Batman, Gotham Knights number 13, Funny Money, with Gene Ha. In 2004, DC Comics presents the Justice League of America, The Secret Behind the Stolen Superweapons, with Peter David and Joe Giella. This was part of a series of one-shots celebrating the life and work of legendary DC editor Julius Schwartz. In 2013, he wrote Seven Against Chaos with Paul Chadwick. His work has also been adapted many times. The nature of much of Ellison's fiction and work is dark fantasy, similar to episodes of The Twilight Zone. Little of his bibliography could be easily labeled as science fiction, and most of it is written in short story form. This combination lends itself well to graphic art adaptation, and Ellison has allowed many comic book writers and artists to do so. Over the years, Ellison's work has been adapted by legions of comics luminaries, including Neil Adams, Alex Nino, Eric Shanauer, Jim Steranko, and the list goes on, including Weird Science Fantasy number 24, Upheaval by Al Williamson, which adapts Ellison's Mealtime. In 1972, Chamber of Chills number 1, Delusions for a Dragon Slayer by Jerry Conway and Sid Shores. In 1975, Unknown Worlds of Science Fiction number 3, Repent Harlequin, Said the TikTok Man, was adapted by Alex Nino. 1978, Ariel, the Book of Fantasy number 3, along with The Scenic Route by Al Williamson. In 1984, The Incredible Hulk number 286, Hero, was an unauthorized adaptation of Ellison's story Soldier. Ellison was eventually paid and credited, but only after he had to bring the situation to the attention of Marvel's vice president. Marvel's then editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter, who else, claimed that Ellison's credit got lost in an editorial shuffle on the magazine, which still doesn't explain why they published an adaptation without permission to begin with. Many years later on his blog, Shooter engaged in a nice piece of revisionist history and laid the entire incident squarely at the feet of writer Bill Mantlo, and confessed his own ignorance of the original story as the reason it saw publication. In 1991, The Twilight Zone number 1 brought us Crazy as a Soup Sandwich by Neil Adams. Then we come to Harlan Ellison's Dream Quarter, which features several of his short stories, including I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
This is where I keep the comic books. This is where Harlan Ellison's Dream Corridor comes from. This is my baby. And every issue, I am the host. I lead the viewer into the Dream Corridor.
2014, Star Trek, Harlan Ellison's The City on the Edge of Forever, the original teleplay, a 5-issue adaptation of Ellison's original script. Then in 2015, we saw Batman 66, The Lost, episode number 1, an adaptation of Ellison's original story treatment for an episode of the 1966 Batman TV show, was adapted by Len Wein and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. On June 29th, we lost Bong Dazo, the Philippine comic artist, who was 56 years old. Thai Bong Dazo, known for his memorable work on Marvel's Deadpool and Dark Horse's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, passed away. He was 56 years old, according to a report by Bleeding Cool. Dazo was previously diagnosed with liver cancer. Shortly after reports of the artist's death began circulating, Marvel confirmed his passing, tweeting, "Marvel is deeply saddened by the loss of Thai Bong Dazo, artist of Deadpool and more great comics. Our heartfelt condolences go out to his family, friends, and fans around the world." Angelo Thai Dazo was born on June 16, 1962, in the Philippines and adopted the nickname Bong from the Filipino Senator Ferdinand Bong Bong Marcos Jr. Also in 2018, we lost Fred Peters, an American animator and comics artist, EC Comics, who passed on at age 95. He was an American animator and comics artist who contributed to several EC Comics. Peters started his career at the Walt Disney Studios in the mid-1940s, where he mostly animated numerous Pluto cartoons. Work by Peters was published in EC Comics Crime Patrol, Crime Suspense Stories, Gunfighter, Saddle Justice, Tales from the Crypt, and War Against Crime. For Crime Suspense Stories, he did several EC quickies. Peters illustrated the story Cutting Cards in Tales from the Crypt number 32. This was adapted for the second season of HBO's Tales from the Crypt television series, and TVCom noted, "In the comic story, the gamblers' names are Lou Crevice and Gus Forney. In the episode, their names are Reno Crevice and Sam Forney." Walter Hill actually used some of the original panels from the comic story to help storyboard this episode. On May 27th, we lost Julio Ribera, a.k.a. Jules McSide, a.k.a. Bop, a Spanish comics artist for The Vagabond of Limbo, Le Grand Manquis, Le Grand Scandal, Dracurella, Montserrat. He passed away at the age of 91. On June 29th, we lost Steve Ditko, American comics artist who helped create Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Hawk and Dove, The Creeper, Shade, The Changing Man, Mr. A, and The Question. He passed away at the age of 90, and we're not going to go further into his biography because we've already done a show a few weeks ago on the passing of Steve Ditko. You can check out that show for more information on Mr. Ditko. On July 5th, we lost Pepe Ferrer, Spanish comics artist, Comic-Con, SL Disney Comics, Rolf Kauka Comics, Egmont Ehapa. He passed at the age of 69. On July 13th, we lost Frank Gerard, French comics writer, at the age of 62. On July 20th, we lost Jeff Hook, an Australian cartoonist, who passed away at age 59.
I was always terribly keen as a little bloke. I was very keen. I think from the age of 5, I was drawing. I loved drawing, and we're looking back now at the 1930s. When I was 5, by the time I started school, I was drawing all the time. The drawing in the in my class at school, I got many a hiding for that. I'd use the column down the left-hand side of the page of your exercise book to draw Messerschmitts chasing Spitfires and vice versa, you see. And I got 6 of the best quite a few times for doing that. Come up the front, Mr. Hook. Up the front I went. Now then. Whack, 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 whack. But it didn't stop me.
On August 1st, we lost Luigi Corteggi, a.k.a. Cortez, Italian art director, painter, illustrator, and comics artist who created covers for Sergio Bonelli Comics, continued Ken Parker, Mr. No, Martin Mysteer, Alan Ford, and Dylan Dog. He passed at the age of 85. On August 5th, we lost John Blair Moore, an American cartoonist and comics artist. Invaders from Home, Disney Comics, Live Bait, Chronicles of Drump, passed at the age of 69. And on August 21st, we lost Vincino, an Italian cartoonist and journalist who passed at the age of 73. On August 23rd, we lost Russ Heath, an American comic book artist and animator who did Men of War, G.I. Combat, assisted Ontario and the Pirates, Flash Gordon, and Little Annie Fanny. He died at the age of 91 from cancer. An American artist best known for his comic book work, particularly his DC Comics war stories and his 1960s art for Playboy magazines and Little Annie Fanny. He has also produced commercial art, 2 pieces of which depicting Roman and Revolutionary War battle scenes for toy soldier sets that became familiar pieces of Americana after gracing the back covers of countless comic books from the early 60s to early 70s. Heath's drawings of fighter jets in DC Comics' All-American Men of War number 89 served as the basis for pop artist Roy Lichtenstein's best-known oil paintings. Heath was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame in 2009.
Do you like the modern comic book art, or do you think it's as good as it used to be, or better?
A true artist used to train like a doctor. He'd go and study drawing in Germany and painting in color in Paris maybe, and it took like 9 years of training. The fact that an editor will give almost anybody a script to try out because they figure if we can't get somebody to fix it up if he does it wrong, then we'll just throw it in the, that's part of the cost of doing business. And so a guy learns tricks. He doesn't learn art, or he doesn't learn anatomy. He learns enough tricks that the tricks get in the way of a whole different ball of wax to devote your life to being an artist. Well, storyline it's almost like a series of posters now, beautifully painted. The story is a word or two, sprinkled over the page. It seems like, and I just think there's so much more that can be done if they can get a system going. Used to be in the old days, most trades were taught by the older guys teaching younger guys. Well, in the comics, it's been different. Somebody says, let's put up a wall and have nobody over 40 in this thing. There's a lot of people getting by doing comics that shouldn't be. I feel like if they want my advice, I'd say, what does your father do? Maybe you should work for him.
He was raised in New Jersey as an only child. Largely self-taught, Heath began freelancing for comics during summers while he was in high school. His last comic book story was penciling and inking the 4-page flashback sequence of the 22-page story, The Mortal Iron Fist Conclusion, in Marvel Comics' The Immortal Iron Fist number 20. On August 30th, we lost Gary Friedrich, American comics writer for Sergeant Furia and his Howling Commandos, The Monster of Frankenstein, and he was the co-creator of Ghost Rider and Son of Satan, who passed away at the age of 75. He was an American comic book writer, best known for his Silver Age stories for Marvel Comics. Friedrich, no relation to fellow comics writer Mike Friedrich, was the first successful new writer brought into the burgeoning 1960s Marvel after fellow Mazoran Roy Thomas. Succeeding Thomas on Sergeant Fury, Friedrich and the art team of Dick Ayers and John Severin produced a World War II series for the Vietnam years, combining militaristic camaraderie and gung-ho humor with a regretful sense of war as a terrible last resort. The humanistic military drama was noted for its semi-anthological stories such as The Medic and The Deserter. Friedrich went on to write a smattering of superhero stories for Marvel, Atlas Seaboard Comics, and Topps Comics. He eventually left the comics industry. In 2011, he lost a federal lawsuit over a claim of ownership in the character of Ghost Rider. But in July 2014, 3 months after an appellate court reversed that decision, the parties said they had reached an agreement. Gary Friedrich was born on August 21st, 1943, the son of Jerry and Elsie Friedrich, and he was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. On August 30th, we lost Marie Severin, American comics artist and colorist, starting with EC Comics and going on to Marvel. She co-created the visual look of Spider-Woman. She passed away at age 89 and was an American comics artist and colorist. She was inducted into the Will Eisner Comics Hall of Fame in 2001. She was born in East Rockaway, New York on Long Island, the second and last child of John Edward Severin, born in Oslo, Norway, who immigrated to the United States at age 3, and a mother, Marguerite Powers Severin, from Syracuse, New York, whose heritage was Irish. Her older brother, John Severin, was born in 1922. The family moved to Brooklyn, New York City when Marie was 4. She attended a Catholic grammar school and then all-girl Bishop McDonald Memorial High School. Frank Jacobs, in his 1972 biography of EC publisher William M. Gaines, wrote, "There was Marie Severin, Gaines' colorist and a very moral Catholic who made her feelings known by coloring dark blue any panel she thought was in bad taste. Al Feldstein called her the conscience of EC." Sea. In 1959, when the industry had picked up again during the period fans and historians call the Silver Age of comic books, Severin again worked for Marvel Comics in production. Severin recalled in 2001 that when Esquire magazine requested an artist to illustrate a story on the college drug culture, Marvel production manager Saul Brodsky offered Severin rather than one of the regular artists who were on a deadline. Her illustrations for the magazine led Marvel editor-in-chief Stan Lee to assign her the feature Doctor Strange in Strange Tales, replacing Bill Everett, who had succeeded character co-creator Steve Ditko. With Lee, Severin co-created the fictional cosmic entity, the Living Tribunal, in Strange Tales number 157. She drew stories of the Submariner and the Hulk in the covers or interiors of titles including Iron Man, Conan the Barbarian, Kull the Conqueror, The Cat, and Daredevil. Additionally, she worked on Marvel's satiric humor magazine, Crazy, as well as the company's self-lampooning comic book, Not Brand Ek. In 1976, Severin co-created Spider-Woman, designing her original costume. She co-created Howard the Duck villain Dr. Bong in 1977. She was inducted into the Will Eisner Comics Hall of Fame in 2001. Severin's work was among that included in the Museum of Comic and Cartoon Art exhibition of women comic book artists, She Draws Comics, in 2006. In consideration of her contributions to comics, Comics Alliance listed Severin as one of the 12 women cartoonists deserving of the Lifetime Achievement recognition. She received Comic-Con International's Icon Award in 2017. On September 24th, we lost Norm Breyfogle, American comic book artist for Batman and Prime, from complications due to a stroke. An American artist best known for his comic book art on DC Comics' Batman franchise from 1987 to 1995. During this time, he co-created the villains Ventriloquist and Ratcatcher with writers Alan Grant and John Wagner. The characters Anarchy, Jeremiah Arkham, Victor Saz, Amygdala, with Grant alone. He co-created with writers Gerard Jones and Len Straczynski the Malibu Comics Ultraverse flagship hero Prime, and both wrote and drew the Malibu published series featuring his original character Metaphysique. He was born February 27th in 1960 in Iowa City. Breyfogle began taking private art lessons at the age of 12 and won an award at a local art show. In 1977, he submitted a design for Robin's costume, which was published in Batman Family number 13. In 1984, Breyfogle penciled a 6-page story for DC Comics' New Talent Showcase. Mike Friedrich, president of Star Reach, a talent representative agency, saw his work hanging at the 1984 San Diego Comic-Con art show and began representing him. This was followed by several issues of First Comics American Flag, penciling a backup story called Bob Violence. He also drew for Tales of Terror, for Eclipse, until he finally landed the gig of Captain America. He then drew Whisper for First Comics, his first monthly book, before landing on Detective Comics starring Batman. Teamed with writer Alan Grant, Breyfogle worked on Detective Comics. They introduced the Ventriloquist in their first Batman story together, and the Ratcatcher in the third. He drew the Batman for 6 years, penciling Detective Comics from 87 to 90, then moving to Batman to introduce the character Tim Drake as the new Robin from 1990 to 1992. Finally, starting a new Batman series for DC entitled Batman, Shadow of the Bat from 92 to 93, which saw the Grant-Breyfogle team create 3 new characters, Jeremiah Arkham, Mr. Zaz, and Amygdala. During his 6-year run on the Batman character, he drew a few one-shots, 2 of them being Batman Holy Terror, the first DC comic book to feature the Elseworlds logo, and Batman Birth of the Demon, which he hand-painted. He also provided pencils to a 10-page short story in Superman, 80-page giant number 1. On November 11th, we lost Jack Tremblay, a Canadian comics artist who created Crash Carson. He passed away at the age of 92. On November 12th, sadly, we would lose Stan Lee, possibly the greatest name in comic books. American comic book writer, editor, film executive producer, actor, and publisher. We already did a show on Stan Lee previously. You can check that out if you want more information on Stan Lee's biography. He passed away at the age of 95. On November 26th, we lost Stephen Hillenburg, American comics artist and animator, the Intertitle Zone, SpongeBob SquarePants, who passed at the age of 57. In addition to creating SpongeBob SquarePants, he also directed, produced, and wrote the title. It has gone on to become the 6th longest-running American animated series. Born in Lawton, Oklahoma, and raised in Anaheim, California, Hillenburg became fascinated with the ocean as a child and developed an interest in art. He studied his professional career in 1984, instructing marine biology at the Orange County Marine Institute.
You know, first with art, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. And with marine biology, I just thought, well, this is a possible career and it's tangible. Obviously, SpongeBob is a comedy, but it really was inspired by me liking marine science.
2 years after leaving teaching, Hillenburg enrolled in the California Institute of the Arts to pursue a career in animation. He was later offered a job on the Nickelodeon animated television series Rocko's Modern Life after his success with The Green Beret and Wormholes, both in 1992, short films that he made while studying animation. He indicated that children's television series such as The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse and Pee-wee's Playhouse sparked something in him. He continued, "I don't know if this is true for everybody else, but it always seems like, for me, I'll start thinking about something and it takes about 10 years to actually have it happen or have someone else believe in it. It took me a few years to get SpongeBob SquarePants together." Hillenburg claimed that he finally decided to create a series as he was driving to the beach on the Santa Monica Freeway one day. "It finally dawned on me that if I was going to do my own show, all those things I lectured about and obsessed about would make for an interesting world." If you love comics as much as I do, you're going to subscribe to my channel. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe! Until next time, this is Kevin Given saying so long, and keep reading those comics.